Hi, I'm Michael Caju.
And I'm Adee Caju, and you're listening to the WAG podcast. This podcast is about health, wellness, and personal development.
Each episode is a short conversation between Adee and I on a single topic with actionable steps. We cover everything from food, mindset, fitness, and relationships.
We started WAG because of the way health and fitness changed our lives, so we hope to share a tool or two that helps you along your way.
Hey, Adee.
Hey, Michael.
I've never been this nervous to do a podcast before.
My heart's racing a little bit too.
I think this is probably the most important topic that we've ever discussed. And it is also something that's just carries some level of charge with just about every person in this country right now, this being America. So guys, we're going to talk about the race issue that's going on. And the purpose of this video...
podcast.
What's that?
We're not on video. You said video.
Oh, we're doing a podcast. So the purpose of this podcast is solely to let Black and Indigenous people of color that are members, former members that follow us know that we stand by you. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not solely. We also want to let you guys know very briefly what is going through our heads and what we're doing. And our intention is to take as little of your bandwidth away as possible from you actually listening and consuming the content of people that have been talking about this issue for years and years, the true thought leaders in this area. We want to really encourage everyone to be listening to Black and Indigenous people of color, listen to the thought leaders, listen to the people that this is just what they do, and educate yourself and challenge yourself. So that's the purpose of this video.
Yeah. We did a webinar that was hosted by Crissy King. I think she's I Am Crissy King on Instagram yesterday. And it was about anti-racism for wellness professionals. It was really well done. It was 2 hours straight of content, and a couple things that she talked about that really resonated with us was that we don't want to center ourselves. So she did mention, like, how are you using your influence, and what are you using your platforms for, and also not centering yourself, meaning that we don't want to make this conversation about us and take you away from doing the work yourself, and encouraging you to get out there and participate in the movement and be the change that we want to see in the world. And I also would like to say, before we get into this, we are definitely not doing this podcast to get thanks, to get appreciation, to get kudos or a pat on the back. This is something that we should have thought about and thought about more deeply for a long, long time ago. And we're grateful that the conversation's coming up, and also don't need appreciation for that.
Over the past 2 or 3 weeks, we've both seen and heard and watched more content around this issue than probably our entire lives combined. Mm-hmm. And me personally, I've been so moved and confronted in a really challenging way, but I think in a really positive way. I grew up in a town of 4,500 people where the town is still split up 50-50 Black and white people by a set of train tracks. And I grew up watching watching a very alive sense of segregation, not forced segregation, but segregation nonetheless. And racism was very alive where I grew up. And this has brought back so many memories of Black kids that I grew up with, and people that were nearly felt like a part of my family. And it's been so present for me how they just did not get the same opportunities. They've never gotten the same opportunities that I've gotten my entire life. And so this feels very confronting for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hearing so many different examples of how people are treated differently just based off of the color of your skin, which is not something you have a choice in, not something that you've earned, is not something that you've worked hard for. It has been devastating for sure, and confronting is a great word to use in that regard. We also want to say that Black lives matter, and The lives of Black, Indigenous, and people of color matter. And right now they're hurting and they need our attention, and they need us to listen to them and educate ourselves and do the internal work to figure out how we can be the change, and be a part of this.
Do you want to pass on the message that we've gotten about why there's people are getting flack about the whole All Lives Matter thing?
Yeah. So we do want to say Black Lives Matter specifically because these are, it's, I guess, the example that Crissy King used yesterday, which has been used a couple times before, is like, you're walking down the street and there's a house that's on fire. And sure, all houses matter and all houses are important. But if there's one house that's on fire, that house needs our attention, and that house is the one that matters most in that moment. And we all need to put our attention on that particular house. And that's exactly what's happening with the Black people of our country right now. And so it's important to say, like, of course, all lives matter. But right now, Black lives matter because they haven't been treated the same. They're not on a level playing field. And we need to, it's like their house is on fire right now, and we need to put our attention there. And we don't want this to be confused, because Black Lives Matter means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And we don't want this to be confused with us saying that we don't appreciate the police force or we don't appreciate law enforcement. And we're talking about that statement directly in the sense of being anti-racism and anti-discrimination against people and other human beings for the color of their skin, not saying that we believe any of the like political aspects about law enforcement. We're not talking about our opinions in that matter. We know that the vast majority of law enforcement are good people and they're doing good work and their jobs are really, really hard. And we really, really appreciate them.
And we need them.
Yeah, we absolutely need them. And we appreciate you. And we also want to make sure that you know that this is really not about you. It's about the Black lives that have been mistreated for hundreds of years now.
So here's what we've been doing lately. The biggest thing, and I think one of the most consistent calls to action that we've heard from all of the different Black people, thought leaders that we followed and listened to, is that we should be having these conversations in our homes, in our communities, with our families. And that's what we've been doing. In our home, we've had so many conversations about this, at times really challenging ones where Adee and I haven't been on exactly the same page, and we're confronting whether or not racism exists and where it exists within us personally. We've also been having these conversations in our friend communities, with our staff, also with our WAG community. And I feel like with anything in life, this for sure, before we go out and try to find solutions or tell other people what they should do about something, we have to become aware of that thing within ourselves first. Where I forget, one of our staff members, Katie, did a seminar recently on this, and
it's from Hello 7.
Hello 7, and they found it was a 4-phase process for change, I believe. The first step was awareness. The second was analysis. What was the third? I know the fourth is change. Anyway. The take-home point for us, and something we've been marinating on a lot, and why we haven't spoken up at all, or almost at all before now, is we felt so uneducated about this topic, and we felt like it would be completely inauthentic to all of a sudden take a really active role in this conversation and try to come up with some solutions without really analyzing this within ourselves and within our family, within our organization first, before trying to go out and take massive action.
We also know that this is not something that's going to change overnight, and any type of change that's going to take time and it's going to take hard work. And that is something to approach like methodically and really see what it is that we can do long term, not just something that just makes us look a certain way. I'm part of a book club right now about on the book by Layla Saad on me and white supremacy. It's kind of like a workbook where you go through each chapter and there's reflective journaling questions at the end of each chapter. I'd highly, highly, highly recommend the book. It was so informative and really challenged me in a lot of ways. And it was very impactful. And one thing, one quote that I took from the book that really, I know it resonated with myself as well as Michael, was that rushing ahead to solutions, especially when we have barely begun to think critically about the problem, bypasses the necessary personal work and reflection and distances us from understanding our own complicity. And that really resonated with me because immediately a lot of my thoughts were, this doesn't apply to me, or that doesn't show up in my life. And then if I rush ahead to how we can solve, or being, Chrissie King called it saviorism. She called it white saviorism. White saviorism of trying to like save people without even looking at yourself. It's bypassing the discomfort and the hard work to see where you've been complicit in this system. And so that being said, that's all we're going to say about what we're doing now.
Well, I want to say one more thing, actually. I think as a part of the whole conversations piece, I feel like it's very important to have conversations with people with differing opinions. And part of that is so that you can be influenced and impacted by what other people say and have a full, well-rounded perspective on this issue. But then also, like for instance, I have some friends that are very conservative that their basic idea is that racism doesn't exist anymore. And if I were to only have conversations with people that are progressive and that think exactly like I do, and they want to be a part of the change, then I'm missing an opportunity to actually have a trickle effect and potentially impact some of these more conservative friends and open their eyes to the way that America really is. And so I think it's important, and this I'm just passing on from other people that I've heard speak. I think it's important to have the uncomfortable conversations with our aunts and uncles, our parents, our siblings, our extended family members, even our colleagues if they're open to it, and not to come from a judgmental standpoint, but just to have an open, honest conversation rather than just sweeping it under the rug or only talking to people that think the way that you think. I think that's part of a lot of problems in this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that is all we're going to say about what we're doing right now. And what the point, we're keeping this podcast short for a very specific reason. And we really don't want to center ourselves in this conversation. What we want to do is encourage you to get out there, keep this conversation alive. There's been so many times where something's been sensationalized in the news, and then a week later there's a new thing that happens, and then we forget about it. And I really am hopeful that this is not one of those things, and this is something that we keep doing. And I mean, we're about to have a baby in under 5 weeks probably, and we want him to look back and think it was absolutely ridiculous that we were even having these types of issues. We want him to be a part of a world where how you look and the color of your skin is not a reason for you to be discriminated against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we encourage you to get out there and listen and absorb as much content as possible from Black thought leaders and just Black people in general, sharing their stories, their experiences, because I think when we do that, we're allowing ourselves to really feel not completely feel or understand what they're going through, but we're getting closer to understanding and feeling what they're going through, mm-hmm. which again, with anything else in life, I think it creates our motivation to be a part of change and a part of movements.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, there a couple places that we've gone to, like Crissy King is really great for the wellness professional space. Hello 7 was a town hall meeting that we went to. And I'm sure right now you can do a Google search and search books on anti-racism and documentaries that I should watch. And if you go to Amazon right now, if you go to Amazon Video, like the top line is all videos about movies and documentaries about Black Lives Matter.
13th Amendment. We watched Just Mercy, which was a movie. Both great films. Yeah, there's
tons of resources out there. A super quick little Google search will give you tons and tons and tons of different things. And we really encourage people to go out there and keep this top of mind and not let it fade. Yeah. So
do you want to read the quote from one of our members?
Yeah. One of our members talked about how as white people, we have unearned privileges that we get just based off of the color of our skin. And it doesn't mean that we haven't worked hard to get to where we are. And it doesn't mean that we haven't struggled. And it doesn't mean that life has been easy for us, but we just have not struggled due to the color of our skin the way that Black people have in America specifically. And one of our members in one of our community calls talked about how the point of this isn't to feel ashamed. It's more so to become an active participant in keeping the conversation alive and being a part of the change. That also really resonated with us. And I bet there's a lot of people listening that this will resonate with you too.
Mm-hmm. Another thing before we sign off is that we're so hyper aware of all of the what's called performative activism going on with businesses or influencers, et cetera, where some people may be saying things or taking a stance on something or even making donations only to look a certain way. And at this point, there's no reason to trust that we're any different. And so we are so open to being held accountable for making changes and moving in a direction that makes this company a part of the change that's happening. Mm-hmm. And so just keep an eye on us over the next, several months and years. And our full intention is to be an active and continued part of the change.
Yes, absolutely. And as a final send off, we know that a lot of people are part of the Working Against Gravity community, and you really trust us and you want to hear exactly the action steps that we are taking. We don't want to use this podcast to do that. We want you to get out there and get into action, and get educating yourself. So if you are one of those people that are in fact interested on exactly the steps that we are taking so far, please email us. So you can email me or Michael, Adee or Michael at workingagainstgravity.com, and we will fill you in on where we're at and what exactly it is that we're doing. We know that that's important for a lot of people to know exactly what it is. We just don't want to use this space to do that.
All right, guys. Love y'all. Bye.
Love you guys.
Thanks for joining us. Stay in touch by signing up for our newsletter at workingagainstgravity.com or on Instagram at workingagainstgravity.
We'll be back next week with another episode. Talk to you then.